Hi, everybody. Good evening, or could it be good morning, or could it be good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. As always, a warm welcome to you to another live stream. And yes, I hope this all finds you well as we head towards the end of November. 2022 is rapidly running out of steam, but we're not. So what I want to do is then I'm going to do my usual routine here. Just give me a second, folks. Just want to make sure that I've got all the live stream comments coming up. So this will take me a little minute to sort this out. In the meantime, please talk amongst yourselves. So hope this one finds you well. As you know, since I think since we spoke last, actually, I got the unexpected information that I was back on the Twitter world. So I'm back in the Twitterverse. So a warm welcome to all my friends over there, and thanks to those of you who have been so kind in the past few days, actually, with very nice comments. I appreciate that. It's nice to know that I was missed. It's almost like, I got to say, having been banished from Twitter and then being brought back, it's like being brought back from beyond. Albert says, "Good evening, David. Glad you enjoyed the Nick Lowe concert. Great artist." Yes, I was in London this weekend. I was in Londonistan for a short visit. The best ones, really, for London, I think, and I had a lovely time. But more of that later. Borny Boy says, "It's David, the Twitter user. No such luck for me." Claude says, "I ain't. No, I'm not leaving Getter. I'm not. I'm very happy to use whatever such platforms are afforded to me. I'm very, very practical person. But hi, Samantha. Thanks for the warm words. All you hardcore users are still banned, I see. I know. Well, look, but I mean, listen, I've already had a word with Elon Musk. I've told him today, you're going to have to buy Apple as well. I'm afraid buying Twitter isn't good enough because Apple are not playing fair, I see, with Mr. Musk. So that's not to be unexpected, I suppose. I just a quick shout outs to Jason, Joe, first name D, all of you guys. Thanks for being over there. Thanks for everybody. Right. So we're going to get to the point of the live stream, really, and that is, I've raged about the state of British politics. I really have, most particularly in the last couple of years, I suppose. And I know it's one that many of you share, and I'm not alone. I'm not the only person who's sick of the state of British politics, the major political parties, all of that. Now, this brings me back to the start. Back in my Twitter years, in particular, there was a gentleman who I was very pleased to call a friend, and we used to talk on Twitter, and he was always a very sane voice, a sane political voice. And there's not too many of them. Aloha, Donny girl, all the way in Hawaii, right? Hawaii, listen down because we're going to get some top British political wisdom tonight. And not for me, I hasten to add. And that gentleman is in the studio, and I'm going to bring him on the stream now. And his name, for those of you who may not know him, is Dr. Teck Khong. Right. Hi, Teck.
Hello, David. Good evening.
Good evening. Great to see you, my friend. Good to see you.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
No, listen, it's an absolute pleasure to bring you on, and you're now broadcasting across the world, right? So you got a global audience listening to you, So I want to start at the top, really, because as I said, Tech, I am so disappointed in the way that British politics has gone. And I guess I'm not alone in that. I mean, I think from what I would understand, you've gone through a similar journey yourself, albeit in a different direction to me.
Yes. I'm not sure whether the internet is working properly, but you seem to be spinning in a circle.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, my political journey started back in the late 1990s. Can you hear me all right?
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you, Teck. Yep. Yeah. Okay, folks, we seem to be having.
Hello?
Yeah, we're here. I'm here. You're not. Right. Okay. Teck is based in a rural location, as you may have gathered. Yes, Republican rocker. I agree with you what you say about Londonistan. Teck back. He's
Back
back.
again. Back again.
So go ahead, Teck. You were saying.
Yes. My entry into politics was actually in midlife. I was no high-flying politician. I was just a humble little GP in a quiet corner of Great Britain. In fact, I was looking after some very poor, deprived people. I mean, that was in an estate called Ayrsmonsall in Leicestershire, which is in the bottom 10% of the country's wards. So it was an eye opener to look after very good, hardworking people. But the late 90s proved to be a very difficult period for caring for patients. So, with all the naivety, but full of fervor to help, I was introduced to politics. One of my patients was the chairperson of the Conservative group in the.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep. We can hear you. Yeah. Keep going. Yep.
Gosh.
Yeah. We're struggling a bit here, folks. Teck's line is not very stable and it's causing a problem. I wondered, Jed, could our producer have a chat and see if we can go audio? Because this is going to be tricky. Yeah. Yeah. Do that. In the meantime, whilst we work this one out. Yeah. Can I just say, Donny girl, yes, I saw about the volcano going up. Yeah, I did see that. I hope everything's going to be okay for you. Yeah. Well, this is the problem about the most beautiful places on earth. They are often the most dangerous, you say. That's the problem. But here, Teck, he is back again.
I'm so sorry. Something seems to be happening with the bandwidth, or maybe
Yeah.
the power
Yeah.
supply. Anyway, so I was introduced to politics by this lady called Anna Pullen. Very naive, and I was then taken to meet various dignitaries in the party, including somebody who is now, of course, Oliver Heal, who was then the chairman of the Select Committee on Health. And I said to the gentleman, I said, look, we're heading the wrong way in the NHS. We're not caring for people in the right way. People don't have to wait ages. The priorities of spending were all wrong. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I presented a 4-page document to both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. Obviously, Tony Blair says we have a government and a policy in place, so we don't really need your input. And that was 1999.
Yeah.
So they encouraged me to go before the parliamentary board for assessment. And I was, I passed the so-called assessment board exam and I was made a candidate of the Conservative Party back in 2002.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely okay. Okay, we're having to give Teck some directions here because his signal is not holding up strong enough to be able to do this by video. So we're going to have to go. Teck's going to have to go to audio. So for your sins, you're going to have to endure me and an image of Teck. So I hope that's going to be okay for you. But yeah, back to Donny girl. I was saying, yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that big explosion. It's the first time in 36 years that volcano has. We need to get Teck onto audio. There's no point in Teck being here as video because the signal's not strong enough. So if he can change his settings, or if we can change his settings, otherwise we have a problem here. So
shall I stop my?
Stop your camera.
Right.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah. That's it.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you all right. We don't have an image of you, but we can hear you. So talk away.
Fantastic. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I began cutting my teeth in the first general election in 2005. Didn't get very far, unfortunately. So I carried on working. I set up the Policy Forum for Health with Andrew Lansley.
Mhm.
I presented some novel ideas on how the health service could be transformed into a more people-friendly service. At the same time, I also looked at how the profession can be changed over to something that had greater accountability and responsibility. I was then working with the BMA on looking at medical chambers as a sort of a versatile group, a versatile unit containing all specialists looking after the needs of a particular population. Fast forward that to the pre-referendum years. I did various things for the people around my constituency, for people abroad. I went to see how we could achieve something that's slightly below government to government level, but actually engaging with people more locally. So I
Yeah.
went to look at, for example, an eco farm back in Malaysia as a template for the Commonwealth, how we could exchange ideas, do knowledge transfer to less developed countries, and so on. So I was very busy working as a GP, doing a bit of politics, trying to champion the people's needs. But unfortunately, my direction of travel parted ways with the Conservative Party, which was predominantly a Remain party. I had very
Yeah.
strong Brexit views, and I became delisted from the party, which I thought was rather sad. But the party's ethos and values started deviating because it didn't look like the party that brought Britain back from the brink that Thatcher did.
Mhm.
So I was invited to move across to UKIP by a fellow Conservative who went across to the UKIP party, and that's Roger Helmer.
Yes, I know Roger.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I stood because of my popularity in the constituency where I was deputy chairman. I thought I'll give it a good bash, but unfortunately, I didn't do well at all. It was the time when UKIP was mounting a campaign to lend Conservative Party the votes, and I think I was the only one going around with my loudhailer saying, "Please don't give your votes to anybody else. UKIP needs some MPs."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it fell on deaf ears.
Mm. Yeah.
So, and I was going to quit politics until wandering through time for a couple of years. I tried to set up a party, but I knew politics had to change. Smaller parties, people who were patriotic, fervent about people's needs, were unfortunately not favored by the first past the post system. So one of the things I hope to see eventually is some form of proportional representation.
Mhm.
Anyway, to cut a long story short, there were two gentlemen, Keith Lonsdale and Mike Hookham, and they invited me across to join them in their newly formed party called the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom.
Yeah.
And I was quite happy to give it one more go and help them with health policy if I was any good at it still. And here I am today, trying to do my best for the British public and help my colleagues see past the difficulties. The difficulties of a censorious climate, something that's very unscientific, very unethical. And I can spend the whole night talking about the various aspects of government policy going forward.
Well,
But
okay. So
I'm open to your questioning, David.
yeah, I'm just coming in. Yeah, we're gonna start. Okay, so let's start. Let's start tech with. I mean, one of the issues for me is, and this has become apparent really since Brexit. So since 2016, it's clear to me that the difference between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party is superficial in many regards, and that is a huge problem because it means that we essentially have a uni party. Would you agree with that?
I do indeed. I do indeed. And in my naivety, I thought it was just a deviation from um, the basic principles. So I used to tweet very early on. I said, "Look, the Conservative Party has stopped being the custodian of conservatism, and the Labour Party has stopped representing the working people."
Yeah.
I think it's more complex than that. It's far more complex than that. And now I believe, having heard all the mutterings of the World Economic Forum, that I think the politicians in Parliament today, whether knowingly or otherwise, have become subservient to a supranational force, and that's very worrying. I think it's not just one force. I think it's a force with many faces in the guise of the WHO, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and so on.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree, Tech. I think and initially, I'm at the point where I believe that and this is why I really was keen to chat to you tonight, because I believe we're presented with like a false choice. You've got the red team and you've got the blue team, and you can choose either of these teams, but it doesn't matter, Tech, because they're going to do exactly the same thing, and that is what they're told to do by their masters, not their masters in Parliament, but in their masters in these, supranational bodies like the United Nations, like the World Economic Forum, like the World,
Precisely.
and yeah, but that means that the British people are essentially disenfranchised, Tech. That's the real problem, isn't it? That, if you want to make your vote count, well, who do you vote for?
Yes, I think the manifestation of that statement is in the reality of the number of parties. We see a huge profusion of parties, and I beg and beg them to come together. I set up the Belmont Declaration with Mike Hookham, and what
Yep.
we say is this: there's no point trying to fight for the same votes against the government. It doesn't work, because what you do is end up splitting votes. And the
Yeah.
last four by-elections, what we have witnessed is the race to the bottom, not even saving the deposits, and that is not right. Yet I think if we group together, forget about egos, forget about minor differences, if we are to serve the people, we need to come together.
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. And the thing that I've always found so frustrating about this, Tech, is it's the egos. The
Yes,
egos involved are so. I mean, it's a real problem, because these egos are so gargantuan that I think they would rather all, fall independently than stand together. And yet, we the people need to have them standing together, I think, which is why I think the Alliance for Free Democracy and Freedom is interesting. So just tell us a little bit about the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom then, please.
so one of the basic tenets is we like to think that people are able to re-engage in politics. um, in your daily life, you probably encounter people saying, "Look, I'm fed up with politics. I'm fed up with this and fed up with that, but I don't understand why I have to do this and the other." And what it is there are people who turn off politics, yet they're very grouse about things not being right for them,
Yeah.
say high taxation or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, they really need to engage again to get themselves heard. So this statement of "I'm not interested in politics" doesn't stand at all. You really have to get engaged, because everything that affects you in life ultimately boils down to politics.
Yeah.
So whether you're well paid, or whether you're heavily taxed, whether you get a good service from a GP or whatever it is, if you don't like it, you have to change it, and the only way to change it is by politics. If your MP is not answering you properly, you threaten him, get rid of him or her, because he's not doing the job. You voted him in, you voted her in. If she's not, or he or she is not doing the job, get the person out.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. But I think the problem we have, Tech, in the UK, and it's very similar as all our American friends listening to this, same problem really, that if your only choice is the uni party, then independents tend not to break it to break through. I mean, the US will either have a Republican or a Democrat as president, and that party will be okay. They alternate between Senate and the lower house, but it's the same. It's the same with us in Parliament as well. You know, I find, but Tech, the thing I figured, the thing that really swung me, where I've become much more radical, on this one, is that not so much Brexit, although we'll come back to Brexit, but COVID from March of 2020, whenever this country was locked down in tyrannical fashion, I believe, by Boris Johnson and the rest of them, and the way we were treated as a people, and to me, Tech, it shocked me because it was a conservative government that was imprisoning us and has been tyrannical for nearly 2 years,
Yes.
and you know, that really, really, really shocked me because I suppose naively, maybe I was very naive, I would have looked to this party of the Conservatives, the party of Brexit, or so I thought, as being one, that would protect our freedoms. But they sold us out as quick as looked at us, didn't they?
Yes, I think we really need to change the face of politics. It cannot work like a pendular system the way we have.
Yeah.
So what we did was we looked at various forms of diversified representation. So Swiss model is one of them.
Yeah.
We really need to get the people down to exercise local democracy. So to follow the principle, what we have set up is, rather than have central control and branches, what we encourage people to do, those who follow us, those who like our principles, is to set up the local groups. And one motto or one title they can have is proud of. So if you live in Belfast, you're proud of Belfast, you want to see Belfast prosper, develop its own unique characteristics.
Yeah.
Set up a group called Proud of Belfast. Put up your candidate under the umbrella of the Alliance Party.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we want to help devolve politics down to the local level. So that's one unique point. The other point is to ensure that if there are parties not able to align for whatever reason, then we say, look, we enter a situation of agreement, or what people call electoral pact, where if you have a very good candidate and we don't have a strong candidate in that particular area, we will support you.
Yeah.
We will also support independents who are very well known, very hardworking in a certain constituency or ward, and we'll support them. So in effect, it is more than a party. It is a movement, a force of the people working to change things for the better.
And that's admirable. I mean, that's the sort of thing that we both definitely do need. And just going back to the Conservatives again, you see, again, Tech, on the Brexit thing, whereas many of us were ardent Brexiteers, we wanted our country's national sovereignty returned. We wanted to be able to make our own laws, our own decisions, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
All control our own borders. Yeah, we thought that. And Boris Johnson got himself elected into number 10 Downing Street because he seemed to be someone who believed that. However, I have to say to you now, at this point at the end of 2022, it's clear to me that this Conservative Party, this current lot, they have no real interest in Brexit at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, would you agree with that, Tech?
Fully agree. You might as well give them a new title. I think you're better off calling them a globalist party or the globalist party, because our interests, British national interests, are not served properly. They use the convenient term Brexit is done. It's not done at all. I mean, you talk to people in the coastal communities, those people whose livelihoods depend on fishing. We have to contend that even to this day, the super trawlers coming to finish off our fish stocks. That can't be right. We're taking back control. What sort of control do we take back when people come into the country without passports, landing on beaches and being accommodated in hotels? They get living expenses paid for, they get healthcare given. And mind you, that is actually off the backs of people like you and I who work to pay the taxes into the system. Now, I don't have a problem with immigration. I've come from a distant corner of the Commonwealth. I came to this country for education. I work and I contribute. That is the difference.
Yep, no, I completely agree. Yeah, and the thing is that the whole like you mentioned that they got Boris, he got Brexit done. You take where I live in Northern Ireland, the deal that was done keeps Northern Ireland, as you understand, I'm sure you understand, Tech,
Absolutely.
in the single market,
Yep.
subject to the European laws. How
Yep.
dare plus to final insult, a border up the Irish Sea. I mean,
It divides the country. Divides the
well,
country,
splits
David.
the UK up. Yeah, yeah, and
So
that's
we
yeah,
are fomenting trouble. The politicians are fomenting trouble. They're trying to they're allowing these forces to divide up our country. They're letting people with no affiliation coming in because of the economic attraction, the attraction of a welfare state. But the hardworking people I represented before and cared for, they're
yeah,
finding what little they contribute, precious little they contribute to as taxes, hoping for a life of happy and sound retirement,
yeah,
being diluted, being diluted by careless spending. Now,
yeah,
to think that the government spends 6.8 million pounds a day just to house them, never mind schooling and feeding and all the other things. 6.8 million pounds a day is a phenomenal sum. And
mm,
then they have the temerity to come to us and say, look, you're going to pay more taxes. So the young ones, our sons and daughters, will have to work harder for longer to support all this feckless behavior. It is not acceptable at all.
yeah. And actually, well, that then brings us to one particular area which we can see under massive well, pressure or assault, whichever terminology you wish, and that is if you take the NHS and you take the pressure that all these individuals put on it, which it was never designed to cope with. It seems to me that the people who lose out are the hardworking, it's everyday Brett who just they want to go out, they look after themselves and their family, take care of each other, and but yet when they then go to try and get a doctor's appointment or to get into hospital or whatever it is, we see unmitigated chaos all around. And do you think that our health system can cope with the way it's being managed by the government?
There's several things to do with the health service. One
Yep.
is obviously the politicians' only solution is to put in more money.
Yep.
And if you look at the Daily Telegraph today, it will say to you, there are so many managers earning six-figure sums. We don't need them. We really don't need them. I was sitting on the CCG board, and I can tell you how many of them were actually earning over £100,000, doing a lot of talking week in, week in, week out, right through the year, and very little gets done. They don't contribute anything at all to the productivity, to the patient through flow. The other thing is, I must say, you take the brightest of school leavers, you teach them, you develop clinical acumen for them, and then when they come out, they're supposed to follow guidelines and protocols. We have diminished their intellect, their capacity for thinking for the patients.
Yeah.
What they
Well,
do is they have to obey the managers. They have to actually look after patients, not the managers. So one of the things we need to do is to get rid of all these wokeism or this left thinking and actually free the doctors to do the jobs properly. None of this hiding under protocols and guidelines saying, "Oh, I have to do it because of this, this directive," and so on. I mean, if you look at the COVID pandemic, for example, now
yeah,
having been a clinical researcher in my earlier years, one
yeah,
of the hallmarks of anything that's coming out or being launched in phase 3 is informed consent. We never gave people informed consent. My own wife never had full informed consent. And the other thing about phase 3 medical product is you give people a choice. They can either take it or leave it. And when they leave it, you don't be churlish and say, look, if you fall ill, that's your fault. You die. You don't say that. You say,
yeah,
look, we will find you alternative ways. There are if you do not wish to take part in this trial, we'll give you something else that may be next best or maybe better. We don't know.
yeah,
But all the parameters of a clinical trial were thrown out of the window. So the ethics were violated. And to add insult to injury, how can they use something that now we know has limited benefit in terms of prevention and prevention of transmission and contraction of the illness, to mandate it for care workers and get so many people to lose their livelihoods.
Yeah. Yep.
There are so many things wrong about it.
Yeah.
So where do we start? So that's the health service. So we lost a lot of staff. We have by censorious attitude prevented exchange of information. So when I tried to ask colleagues to give me information on how many people were developing clots and so on, I was immediately shut down. When I say we'll try this medication, which has been in use for years, they tell me it can't be used by you because it's only to be used in hospital under trial situations. What is there to stop us for doing best for our patients? Why should a political dictate interfere with the care of the patients?
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah,
there are so many things wrong about this.
Yeah.
And if you speak to one of my colleagues in St. George's Hospital, he will tell you he has encountered people who have, when they were stable from cancer treatment or whatever it is, they have been destabilized after receiving the boosters.
Yep.
So we know the benefits of the vaccine are not properly told to people. The benefits are actually exceeded by the disadvantages of risk. So for a condition that is generally mild, unless you're very weak with multiple pathologies or whatever it is, so for the benefit that you might get against the risk of serious adverse events, it is a no-brainer. I have called for a moratorium on the rollout.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But anybody who dare speak out will be vilified, will be subject to censure from bodies that are not prepared to listen. Science can only progress through debate and discussion. You cannot shut down science and then impose your standards. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've had a doctor on this on one of my shows a couple of times now. Dr.
Yes, I know David Cartland.
David Cartland.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Good guy. I like him very much.
He's a good guy, and like yourself, and like I think all good doctors want to do the best by their patients. I mean, that's how it should be.
Absolutely, that's the vocational standard we work to.
Exactly. Yes. And also, of course, the maxim "first, do no harm." So when I look at how the likes of Dr. Cartland has been treated, Teck, it's a clear signal that things are very, very wrong. That this is how we treat doctors seeking to stick to first principles. Actually, people like that, in my opinion, they are the best of what we the people that we want. We need more people like that in our health service, but we're not going to get them because to my view, you see, I think the NHS it's probably beyond repair, because it's not just, as you say, it's not just money. I mean, anyway, it gets too much money. It's not just repair. It's institutionally, I just think, dysfunctional.
Subverted. It's subverted by people with values that are alien to common sense. What I would say is, I beseech people to vote wisely the next time around. And this is not a problem peculiar to the United Kingdom. You would have heard how, for example, Dr. Bill McCulloch got his specialist status revoked from him.
Peter McCulloch, you mean? Peter McCulloch.
Peter McCulloch, yeah.
Yeah, I know Peter, yeah. Yeah, shameful, absolutely disgraceful. But that's why I think, Teck, that the whole COVID years have been a major, major wake-up call for a lot of people. A lot of people listening to this, watching this.
A lot of people, David, across nations. So one of the things we need to do is to look outside our little context. So we do what we need to do for Britain. We also need to link hands with other people in other countries. The Dutch farmers who have had the land usurped from them,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
Canadian farmers, we have to look and understand why this problem is so widespread.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the big recognitions, I think, Tech, of the last couple of years. That even though people have been put and subject to extreme tyranny, it's also brought people together.
Yes.
Which, so I take, I think that's a really, really good thing. There's always, even in the worst moments, good things can come out of them. And what I see is loads and loads of people who have woken up. They're looking through the hypocrisy of the Conservative Party. They look to the Labour Party. It's a abhorrent party. Although it is my view. I don't know what you think. I've been saying this for a while now. So I believe they're going to get in 2024. Keir Starmer is going to be the next prime minister, and I think that's deliberate. He is the next selected one, and he'll begin the process of then, I think, reversing us Tech back into some relationship, Swiss style or otherwise, with the EU. What do
Yes.
you think about
I think
that?
you're right. I think you're right. They're sitting quietly in the third corner, the Lib Dems, and they're very Europhile.
Yeah,
So it wouldn't be beyond imagination for Keir Starmer if he gets a reasonable number of MPs, if not a good majority, to align or to partner with
yeah,
Lib Dems and get us
yeah,
back in. So what
yeah,
I would say is this: I would like the British patriots, those who
yeah,
value and cherish the British sovereignty and their personal freedom
yeah,
to support parties like the Alliance. And what I like to say is this: I think if you look at the two front runners at the moment, so you have the Reform Party with
yeah,
big donors. Now, one or two people have started telling me, he says, are you aware they are control opposition?
yeah,
And, the way Nigel Farage is now realigning himself, well, he was always a director of the Reform Party Limited.
yeah,
So what
yeah,
we have is there is a lot of big money. Now, big money talks big media. So the difficulty we have, or rather the handicap the alliance is under, is the lack of money to buy the necessary literature, to buy airtime, to tell people we are here to look after them.
mhm,
On the other
mhm,
hand, we have UKIP. Now, we met with the UKIP leadership, and one of the right comments made to us was, we cannot really do much um, partnership working with you people because we have legacy money. So money talks, and it's a shame. So what we want to rely
mm,
on is people's trust in us. We approach them sincerely. We want their membership. We want them to help power this thing, not with big money, not with big lobbyists, but we want the people to be on side with us so that we can actually champion what they so firmly and fervently believe in.
yeah,
Personal
yeah,
freedom, yeah. There's
yeah,
so much coming. There's so much coming on stream, David. I mean, if you look at the COVID saga, we have lying in the background uh, personal ID in digital format, which when the
yep,
central bank digital currency comes in force and on stream, that will then tie up very neatly with digital ID. And when they decide to pair it up with the climate agenda, you will find that your movements, your spending, everything will be under the guise of the regulations that pertain to climate.
yeah,
So you'll not be able to use so much carbon. You'll not be able to buy this sort of food.
yep,
You'll not
right,
be allowed to travel so far. And if you do, if you transgress, there'll be penalty points. Your digital currency will be withheld from you, and all sorts of things. It's a system being piloted, trialed in China, um, and it's so easy to copy it because they have it to a fine art.
yeah, yeah. Okay, exactly. That's a big worry. But let me talk about another worry I have. I want to hear what you think about this. You say we know that the Conservatives, the two main, the legacy parties, the Uni Party,
Yes.
can't be trusted. But there's another concept that I've been writing about it recently and talking about it. It's the what I call the Judas goat concept. And
Mhm.
what I mean by the Judas goat concept is, and again, because I think it's all controlled. So the establishment says, look, you can vote for the red team, you can vote for the blue team, and oh, by the way, if you don't like them, here's another party which, if you want to be a rebel, you can go and vote for. And this brings me back. You mentioned Nigel Farage, so I want to get into this one. Nigel, I did support the ideals of the Brexit Party Tech back in 2018, 2019. And I
Yes.
was and I think I was not alone in waking up the morning after we discovered that Nigel Farage, having everyone, all those patriots had gone to support Brexit Party. And that morning when he said, yeah, I'm standing down all the candidates so that Boris can get a super majority. And he did that. And to me, that was a Judas Goat act of betrayal, to be quite blunt
Yes.
about it. He betrayed, and that annoys me. That what annoyed me then, and now again we have all these years later. Now, Tech 3 years on, whatever. We have again lots of disgruntled people, a lot of conservative people, actually, ordinary people, disgruntled, very unhappy. And could the same thing happen again?
Yes. Very much so. Very much so. Look, um, I don't think it's a coincidence that when I was standing for UKIP, I had to battle against the slogan "Lend Conservative your votes."
Mm,
When I was very determined to ensure that Brexit happened, and afterwards I joined Brexit Party for a very short time. I paid my fee
yeah,
and was hoping to stand, and then we were promptly stood down. Now, to make sure that the Labour Party doesn't get in, the same story seems to have been repeated. This mantra: if you vote them, if you don't vote for us, you get them. That
yeah,
is so. Once bitten, twice shy, and I'm not. I don't think I'd be the only one to worry about this. That if you
yeah,
vote Reform, you probably end up with Mark II Conservative Party, which is
yeah.
what I put on my tweets.
Yeah, this is exactly that. Look, we're getting to a crunch point. This is something that I passionately believe in. I fear that history is going to repeat itself, and actually, it's just as Machiavellian as the first time round, because the first time round, oh yeah, we have to keep Labour out, and so everyone vote for Boris. Boris gets in. Boris then Tech proceeds to do everything antithetical to the conservative mind, in
Yes.
every regard. And in the form of Rishi, we see this new Rishi Hunt axis of raise taxes, essentially subvert freedom in every conceivable way. This is not a conservative government. But in 2 years' time, people are going to come and say, oh, well, they're better than Labour. They're not. They're the same. Uh,
Yeah.
and something like reform could be waved in front of people, because I keep being told, oh, look at the reform, they're 8% and rising in the polls, and that's before we get to 2024. And so but I just look and I think I am really, really not confident here at all. And then I see the other parties, Tech, I mean, the one thing we can probably agree on is UKIP was one movement that was a grassroots patriotic movement that did,
Absolutely right.
and it did something really, I think, possibly without historical precedent in UK British politics. But it forced David Cameron to call the referendum, and so
Mhm.
UKIP was, and I was happy, fortunate to meet UKIP people, and they were the best people, patriotic people, good people, people who saw through the conservatives. So I just wonder how all those people must feel today, because like you and I think they must feel this sense of we're going to get Brexit stripped away from us. I mean, it's already happening, but it will almost formally happen, and they need to find somewhere to go. Tech, they need to go out and find another home. And this is where I think what you guys are doing is important. There needs to be a home for them to go and vote.
David, I couldn't agree more. That is why it is so important that I'm not the important person. I may be helping the alliance achieve its mission, but I'm
Yeah.
not there. I'm not a Nigel Farage figure.
No.
What I want to do is to galvanize the people and give them their power back. Now, UKIP did that. UKIP won the referendum not just because of Nigel Farage, but because of Nigel Farage's belief in the people.
Yeah.
So, what I want to do is to believe in the people, their common sense and their power will prevail, and will be put back on the right trajectory to achieve British sovereignty and personal freedom. It's so very important people understand that. We may not have big money, but we have hopefully the hearts and minds of the people wishing those things to happen.
Well, I can tell you, like over the past, again, from 2020 onwards, I mean, I attended several rallies of people who were questioning what the government was doing, and in terms of lockdowns, tech, and in terms of vaccine passports, and all of that. And the thing that was quite really, it was brilliant. It was a brilliant thing. You find yourself in a group with people, and some of them are politically. I mean, I would be, I suppose, naturally a conservative with a small c, naturally on the right with a small, sort of centrist right, I suppose. But you'd be talking to people who would be centrist left, and all of a sudden, some kind of, for me, the old style delineations didn't matter so much anymore. I want to be with tech people who support freedom, people who support bodily autonomy, people who place those values at the top, because that's what matters. Because when crunch comes to crunch, that's all that matters. If you're being,
Absolutely right.
and, and you can't trust. I mean, clearly, don't the big parties here in the UK are 100% on board. The WEF bandwagon. So they would happily lock us up if they got the chance. That's why we need alternative tech, but we need trustworthy alternatives, not Judas Goat alternatives.
Absolutely right. One of my colleagues, the first leader of Alliance, Ernie Warrender, and he came up with a very eloquent and elegant term. I personally think this left-right polarization is very flawed, is anachronistic. What Ernie Warrender came up with, the term that truly represents what the party stands for, is center sensible. So,
Yeah.
like Ernie said, when he was a young man needing education, needing hospital treatment, he would feel like a socialist. When he wants to earn a living and doesn't want to pay too much tax, he feels like a conservative. Look, we're not going to be involved in this swing from left to right, socialist to capitalism, and so on. What we want is center sensible policies, and that's what we want to achieve. Now, we will defy people trying to categorize us. We do what is right by the people for the people.
Yeah.
British ascendancy. I look back in the early 1920s at the Ottawa Empire Conference. Britain was at the head of the world's largest trading bloc. 50 years on, we turn our backs and join the European Economic Community, or EU now. What have we done? We have lost our traditional trading partners. We could have developed the market. We could have been building it up with kindred spirit instead of either ignoring them and now being accused of having plundered them. We need to rebuild the reputation of Britain, of the United Kingdom abroad, and regain our ascendancy. It is so important. It starts at the very grassroots. The people who are now dissatisfied with the way their lives are heading, to come together and listen to us and show the established parties where the true power lies, and it lies with the people, not with the politicians in Parliament today.
Yeah. See that. Look, I'm at the point where I see the politicians in Parliament down beside the River Thames to be. They're the problem. They're the people that didn't want Brexit in the first place. They're the people 100% that go behind the COVID tyranny. They're the people also currently quite happy to shove as much of our taxpayers' money and weapons into Ukraine as possible in pursuance of war. I mean, I see the politicians now, Tech, as the problem. More so than I ever did in the past. Certainly the establishment politicians. And the other thing I think about them, I don't know what you feel, but I feel that they are all pretty much controlled by, if not by the party structure, by whips, by all the stuff that goes on, as you probably know. There are very, very few free spirits in Westminster.
Absolutely right. And I mean, I may not be the most eloquent voice in amongst the Conservative candidates, but I spoke my mind. I spoke what I believe is the truth, and
Yeah.
it didn't go down very well. And eventually, we parted ways.
Yeah.
And this is what we should be able to have if politics were to thrive. We should respect opinions. Opinions may differ, but the bottom line is we have to respect difference of views to move forward. We have to have one thing in common, and that is you got to love the country to move it forward.
Yeah, and the politicians that we have love themselves. That's the
Yes,
problem.
absolutely.
I mean, and that's so apparent. They I mean, if you've, I've been fortunate to be, been visited Westminster a few times, and I've been inside and whatnot. And I'm coming out of it thinking the thing that I normally think. It's a beautiful building, it's gorgeous and all that, and there's loads of history, and it's full of the worst kind of people. I don't want to spend any time with them at all, because they don't. The thing is, Teck, they don't love their country. They're totally opportunistic. They're nakedly opportunistic. Boris Johnson, probably the best example of that. This guy will spin whichever way the wind blows. How can someone like that lead our great country?
Yes. Couldn't agree more, David. I think the answer is follow us, join us, support us, centre sensible politics. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a very sensible terminology, because I think we do need to basically detonate all the old false, the fake illusions between us, and find all the common ground. That's what I found during COVID, and I've now formed alliances, Teck, with people that historically I would have been very antithetical to. They would not have been aligned with me. Now I can sort of, the blinkers have gone out of my eyes, and I'm thinking, well, I just want to be able to live my life. I want to be able to have my freedom. I don't want, I like, when it comes to COVID and the vaccines in particular, I believe people should be allowed to absolutely, choose what they want. If they want to take it, fine. If they don't want to take it, which was my choice, fine. And not to be discriminated against. I don't want to live in a society where all that's stripped away from us. It's as simple as that for me, Teck. And I've discovered that there's as much of appeal with people on the left as on people on the right when it comes to these core values of freedom and, if you like, democracy.
I think freedom and the love for one's country transcends whether you think in the old terminology left and right. In fact, if you start thinking about fellow human beings, about where the country is heading, there is no place for being left or right.
Yeah, great. Agreed. Yeah. In fact, to me, that's about growing up, isn't it? Politically, you're maturing, because what you're saying is, that's, I'm not going to get distracted into what's right and what's left. And and that's, and I know that's easier said than done, but we have to be like this, because we have to. I mean, I'm seeing a guy called Stephen here saying communities need to get involved, start locally, build neighborhood watches, get together with others. Just bring it up on screen, who have a great deal of common sense. You see, I still have a lot of confidence in the ordinary British person, Teck. I just don't have any confidence in the establishment political system. None, zero.
Yes.
And so, and again, Stephen says, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, the less we rely on government, the better off we are.
Thatcher did say that, the more you let the government run your affairs, the less freedom you will have.
Yeah. As I said, Teck, I was across in London this weekend. And I was just walking. I was just remembering when I was there. I also happened to be in London the time when Margaret Thatcher died. I remember that. Remember it so well. And I was thinking to myself on Saturday there, this current Conservative Party, what do you think she would have made of it?
I think she's turning a grave already. I mean,
Mm.
to be honest, if you look at the politicians we have, whether it's Margaret Thatcher or that very feisty speech by Peter Shaw at the Oxford
Yep.
University debating team,
Yep.
that iconic speech. If you look at Peter Shaw, look at Margaret Thatcher, or even look at what's this Labour chap who recently died, the pipe smoking man,
Tony Benn.
Tony Benn, absolutely right. If you take away the affiliations and put them together in the same room, you couldn't disagree that they're all patriots in their own way.
Yep.
What has divided them in people's minds is they're either Labour or Conservative.
Yeah.
What we need to do is to establish this brand called patriotism.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's neither
Yeah.
left right. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me that this left-right divide is a construct to
Yep.
keep people apart
Exactly.
so that
Yep.
the tyranny can continue.
You're absolutely right. I am 100% certain that they play the game of left right to divide us. And because what they fear actually is the thing you've talked about, Tech, throughout this last hour. They fear the fact that we, just ordinary people, might actually find lots in common and unite in ways that they don't like. They mightn't like the fact that we just come together and we don't need them, and we don't need their false classifications. I think there's a lot of truth in that for me. What do you think?
Yep, couldn't agree more. This is why despite my slowly advancing years, I'm committed to this mission of bringing people together, regardless of the class, regardless of the backgrounds, their occupation. We're all the same. We have an aspiration to live our lives the way we wish, bring up children to a world where there's freedom to choose what they want to do, not to be controlled, not to be falsely imprisoned. In fact, all these rules about to come upon us.
Mm. I gotta agree with the comment that just came up there from First Name D. He says there's no left and right. It's just us versus them. Well, I agree with that 100%. It is just us. The thing is that they try to give us the impression that there's very few of us and there's a lot of them. But I think the truth is, I think reality is actually the opposite. There's a lot of
Yes.
us and there's very few of them. And if us can get organized and get together, then I think that is going to be, that's our way out of this one. I think it does come from the people getting together, and as you say, Tech, and this is where by they've stretched themselves very hard over COVID tyranny, very very hard over COVID tyranny, and maybe the counter effect of that is that a lot of us have now woken up and we've said, right, enough of this. We see through them. We see through the red team and the blue team. We see Judas goats wherever they are. We see them. We're not blinded. And as you say, the other thing is money. Tech, you mentioned, in a way they say follow the money. And yeah, sorry, Donny Girl says it's also good versus evil. Well, it always has been, Donny Girl. It's always been good versus evil. And we've seen again in recent years how evil can sometimes suddenly just step out of the shadows, and it's there in a very benign form, telling you to take your booster. But anyway, we're on YouTube, so we can't say too much about that, or I get struck down by the YouTube gods. So yeah, as I say, Claude says here, I see on over in Getter, he says they want to prevent left and right speaking to each other. Exactly, Claude, because when we do, we will find we have so much in common with each other, Tech. And I think that's, I don't want always to be doomy and gloomy about everything. And I think that what you're talking about in the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom, these are things that unite us do not divide us. They're things that everyone can get into. Yeah, I think that is all good stuff. Tech, if people want to find more out about the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom, tell us how they can find out more.
Very straightforward. The website is adfparty.uk, and they're welcome to follow me on Twitter is at Dr. Teck Khong. And yep, we can have continuing dialogue outside of your studio.
Yep, there you go, friends. You can see it on screen there. There is the, I think that's is that the Getter or Twitter? It's one of the social media links.
Yep.
So just click and follow that there, and you can you can find out more information. As Canadian mothers, the Welcome to Alliance for Democracy and Freedom side, as Canadian Mom says, we are the truth tribe here. Yes, we are Canadian Trump.
Yes.
Canadian Mom. We absolutely are, and in a sea of darkness and a sea of deceit, it's always brilliant to have people like all of you folks on the streams here, and Dr. Teck here with me, because I do believe that ultimately right prevails. I do believe that. Otherwise, I just give up. But it's a battle. It is a battle at times, and that's why we need warriors like Dr. Teck. So look, we've come to the end of our allocated time. Stephen has joined us over now on Getter. Yeah, I know there's so many platforms. I get that, Stephen. There's that's the problem actually. But listen, we just have to use them because we want to get the truth out there. So, Teck, thank you so much for taking the time
My pleasure.
to be with us this evening. Apologies that the video thing didn't stand up, but people can hear your words. And of course, don't forget, this, folks, goes out as a podcast as well as it does as a video stream. So there's that. Also, just to remind people, by the way, a final word, that don't forget davidvance.net, up, live, functioning, loads of stuff there. Oh, Tech's joined us for the last second here. We can see him. So Teck, listen, whilst you're still there and before the signal goes, I want to wish you a good evening. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for spending your time.
Stay in touch. I may be around the street corner doing a street fight, promoting the people. Okay. And have a good night. Have a Merry Christmas. If I don't see you before.
Same to you, Teck. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Catch you all soon. Bye. Good night, everyone.
Bye.